Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning for a press conference regarding excessive taxation here in our great state of Connecticut. Governor Lamont and his majority are advocating for $200 million of taxes levied against gasoline and trucks that the middle-class families of Connecticut are going to have to pay at a time when the middle-class family is struggling. These taxes are the most regressive taxes. They are going to hit the middle and lower income harder than they would at the higher echelons. Now, the governor will tell you that this is a small tax. He'll focus on the fact that the gas tax is only a nickel, as he says. But the fact is, it's $100 million in gas, it's $100 million on tax on trucks, and in the communities that we represent, communities like Stratford, East Haven, those towns, $100 million means something, and it's significant. It's what makes our great state more and more unaffordable. We're here today because we need to raise the level of awareness, to let the people know what's going on. The majority will tell you that we're getting great money, which we are from Washington. We're getting billions of dollars out of Washington. We're going to have a surplus this year, but that's not enough for the majority. They're coming after the middle class wallet, and we want to raise the level of awareness and to have people speak out and call their legislators, Democrats and the governor. Let them know that taxing our gas and our food, which are middle-class necessities, is regressive and excessive at the least affordable time. What's worse is that these taxes won't even deliver on the promised environmental clean air that they are focused to be used for. So what we're doing is we're kicking this off today. We're planning to have rallies across the state, and I'm very happy to be partnering with No Tolls Connecticut and Patrick Sasser to make sure that this message is delivered to middle-class families. I'm also very thankful to have my Senate ranking members on transportation, Senator Heather Summers, on environment, Senator Craig Minor, and on finance, revenue, and bonding, Senator Henry Martin, who have worked tirelessly to bring this issue to the forefront and to kick this project off, to make sure that everyone knows what the Democrats are doing to family budgets and how bad that action is. With that, I'd like to turn this over to our partner in the House, Republican leader, State Representative Vincent Candelora.
Thank you, Senator Kelly, and thank you all for being here. I also, too, want to acknowledge Representative Harding, who did yeoman's work in the Environment Committee, and also Representative Devin Carney, our ranking member on transportation. It is important for people to understand what this proposal is actually all about. We hear about it being sort of a gas tax onto our middle class and all the consumers in the state of Connecticut. And it's being veiled as an attempt to reduce emissions in the state of Connecticut. Common sense dictates that 3 states, some of the smallest states in the union, could somehow come together and have an impact on our overall emissions throughout the state of Connecticut. Doesn't make much sense when you think about it. And what this really is all about is another attempt for the Democrats to pickpocket the state of Connecticut. We've seen right now the state of Connecticut has currently a cheaper program where residents are already paying into a program to incentivize electric vehicles. And the reality is that that program, all of its leftover money gets swept into the general fund. It doesn't go toward reducing emissions. And what we've seen is that money primarily goes to our wealthier communities. Because the reality is that middle-class residents and lower-income residents cannot afford the electric vehicles that are being pushed upon us. And so those are the ones that are going to be left behind as the wealthier communities are able to afford their Teslas and their electric vehicles. Right now, we see that proposal being pushed through the Senate, frankly, from districts that could afford it. And meanwhile, our middle-class districts have to pay the price tag. And that's what this is about. It's bad enough we're already paying into the cheaper program, or the money's going to the general fund. This is yet another added tax that won't really come to fruition to reduce emissions. And then finally, we've heard about this truck mileage tax, which the only other state in the country that has attempted this is California. And they're still wrought with trouble in how it's going to be implemented. And the state of Connecticut still doesn't know how they're going to do it. But we do know that overall the impact is going to be on the middle class, because these trucks obviously are the ones that are carrying our products throughout the state of Connecticut, and it's only going to make it more expensive for them. And the Democrats really have no good plan on how they're going to implement this tax. And I'd just like to remind everybody that the legislation of passing taxes and figure out how to utilize it later has not worked very well, as evidenced by the paid family medical leave, that residents are already seeing 0.5% coming out of their paycheck, and they still have not figured out how they're going to implement that policy. I fear that TCI and the truck tax is just going to go in that direction as well. And so with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Vin. You know, it's important to note that the sacrifice that the Democrats are asking families to make doesn't even fulfill the promise. Not unusual for the majority. First and foremost is that the TCI ask residents to make a sacrifice for greenhouse emission. But one of the things that we do know is that the weather patterns run from west to east. And while Connecticut, Massachusetts, and I believe the District of Columbia may be signing on to this, states to our west, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, are not part of this. So if they don't become part of this, the weather pattern is still going to come our way and not achieve the results that we're seeking. Not to mention the achievements that Connecticut is making with regards to greenhouse emissions, and the addition of the TCI is de minimis at best. It's also important to note that the Sierra Club has also withdrawn its endorsement of the TCI initiative because what they're saying is that this plan as proposed will not accomplish the goals that they're promising. I think these are very important points to raise, because if we're going to ask Connecticut families to make a sacrifice, then they should get the benefit of that sacrifice. And they're not getting that with this. What we would rather see happen is that we utilize our funding to reduce congestion on areas like 95, to reduce greenhouse emission through that, to also look at things like open space initiatives and greenways, and to incentivize energy efficiency through rebates, credits, and changes to building codes. These are all common sense initiatives to continue the progress that Connecticut is already making in this area, rather than adding another burden to struggling middle-class families. So with that, and we've also asked our federal delegation, by the way, to start working with those states to our west to make sure that they participate. And to date, we have received no response from the delegates in Washington. At this time, I'd like to introduce Wayne Pesch from the Connecticut Food Association.
Good morning. On behalf of Connecticut's grocery retail community, we're here to talk about the two taxes on mileage and the TCI tax. We estimate that the truck tax and the TCI combined would cost the average Connecticut family almost $500 a year in their grocery bill. We think the tax is regressive, and we also are asking our legislators to protect consumers, as well as food suppliers, food distributors, local trucking companies, and our state's most vulnerable residents who will really feel the impact of this tax the most. The governor's budget relies mostly on about $1.75 billion, relied on $1.75 billion in revenue. However, there's an additional $850 million that came from the federal government, plus an additional $300 million in the rainy day fund. This is about affordability. This is about the cost of living. This is about the cost of food. And this is about raising our families here in the state. So we respectfully ask the legislature and the governor to reconsider these two specific taxes, which we think are regressive and hurt our most vulnerable citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wayne. At this time, I'd like to introduce Joe Scully of the Motor Transport Association of Connecticut.
Good afternoon, everybody. Joe Scully, President of Motor Transport Association of Connecticut, representing small business trucking companies here in the state of Connecticut. We are greatly concerned with the two tax proposals that are going to crush small businesses here in the state of Connecticut. One is TCI. TCI is implemented. It is going to increase automatically every year over a 10-year period. And not $1 of that is going to go to good repair. It's not going to highways, roads, or bridges. Additionally, TCI is not going to have much of an impact on climate change or emissions reductions. The people who run TCI have said that we're going to get a 24% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions even without TCI. And that's because of federal rules on emissions and fuel efficiency that apply to everybody. So TCI is not an infrastructure program. It's not an environmental program. It's just a money grab. And it's going to crush small business trucking companies whose trucks run on diesel fuel. Now, there's also the truck mileage tax. That is a failed policy. 20 states have tried and given up on a truck mileage tax, or what we call a weight distance tax. They have not collected the revenue that they thought they would because it's expensive to administer, it's hard to enforce, it's easy to evade. So why would the state of Connecticut think that they could do this where 20 other states have failed? To make that worse, the administration has repeatedly said this would be administered on the honor system. So what out-of-state trucking company is going to sign up to voluntarily send an extra tax to the state? Meanwhile, the businesses that we do have here in the state of Connecticut have testified it's going to cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so look, this is a horrible idea, which, by the way, it's risky for the state of Connecticut as a whole, because history shows us these taxes do not bring in the amount of money predicted. So if we think we're going to get $90 million a year from this, we're not, and that is going to cause us to lose out on hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government because we're not going to be able to have the money to leverage the federal funds that the administration is talking about. And before I turn it over to one of our great small business trucking company members based here in Connecticut, I would just point out these two taxes are being pushed at a time when we have a surplus in our current fiscal year, we have a $3 billion rainy day fund, we have $2.7 billion from the federal government, we have a federal infrastructure program in the works, which is going to send even more money down to the states. We may get earmarks if Congresswoman DeLauro, chairwoman of appropriations, is able to bring more money home. Why would we do this to ourselves right now when we don't have to? It's only going to crush in-state small businesses. So I'd like to introduce John Pernicki from Coastal Carriers of Connecticut so he can briefly talk about how this is going to impact his business.
Thank you, Joe, and thank all of you for having me. My name is John Pernicki. I'm from Coastal Carriers of Connecticut. We're a small trucking company, transportation business located in Ansonia. The TCI proposal and the truck mileage tax are going to impose huge costs on our business and on the taxpayer, costs that we simply can't absorb. Let me start by saying that we don't understand really why there seems to be a target on the back of the trucking industry from this governor. We've done our part over the years to pay for the Special Transportation Fund. It's no secret that the state, on a regular basis, has raided that fund, and it's in crisis. It's going to run out of money. Our industry throughout this pandemic and every other crisis we've faced as a country or a state has been unwavering in its commitment to delivering essential products and services. We adapt to whatever situation that we need to so that the American public, the people here in Connecticut, don't have to go without. There was never a trucking or delivery crisis over the last year like there's been in so many other industries and businesses. Simply put, the supply chain cannot be disrupted. We as an industry won't let it happen. So first off, let me talk about programs like TCI. They increase cost to all fuels. We run on diesel fuel. That's what our trucks run on. As any business will tell you, we have to pass on that added cost to our customers, which in my case are gasoline suppliers, heating oil dealers. Those companies will pass on the additional cost at the pump or to the consumer in the case of a heating oil, a house heated by heating oil. So additional dollars that are being added to the price of a gallon of gasoline as a result of TCI are just the beginning. This is a very regressive and painful tax, as has already been described. I say that because these taxes hit the hardest on low to middle income people. Gasoline, like groceries, is a necessity. A TCI tax will significantly cut into household incomes. Secondly, there is a truck mileage tax being proposed, which is onerous, punitive tax aimed right at our business, right at trucking companies. We've calculated that this will cost our business anywhere from $175,000 to $200,000 a year. Again, these costs are going to be factored into what we charge our customers, and we simply can't afford them. No business can afford them. And I'll add, like other people have too, that this is in a year that I believe we're getting $2.7 billion from the federal government. We're going to have a surplus this year, and we're going after taxes from the transportation business. We need to make better use of our transportation funds in this state. We need to revisit the Special Transportation Fund that was set up and was a really good idea, and we've destroyed it. That's not the trucking business. We need the state legislature to support small businesses like mine and reject both of these proposals. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Okay. So, if you're tired of having the Democrats' hand in your wallet, then we would encourage you to visit our StopTheGasTaxCT.com and StopTheFoodTaxCT.com to sign our petitions and to learn more about why these taxes don't deliver on the promises. We would also encourage you to join some of our rallies. Our first rally will kick off tomorrow, Thursday at 5 p.m. at Wheels at 440 Lordship Boulevard in Stratford. And we are going to once again partner with No Tolls CT and Patrick Sasser as we move these events throughout our communities. We urge people, now is the time to act before these taxes are passed by the Democrats. You have a chance. Let's take action. With that, I'll turn it over to State Representative Vin Candelora.
Thank you. I'd just like to close to point out that we've heard from our small businesses and how it will impact them throughout the state of Connecticut. And what was interesting is the only testimony that we heard in favor of this were large publicly traded corporations who showed an interest in the TCI concept. Bottom line is that's because this is more to do with sort of a stock market trading scheme as it is to do about clean emissions. And so our final concern is that we are going to see our small businesses crowded out by being unable to get these tax credits at the expense of large corporations who have a seat at the table. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.